Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take this absolute fire hose of global information, all the articles, the policy memos, the research, and we try to make sense of it.
We try to connect the dots for you.
Exactly. And you're joining us at a moment that feels, well, incredibly complex. We've got breakthroughs in quantum mechanics sharing the front page with geopolitical crises over, thousand-year-old territory.
It's a dizzying news cycle. It really is. We're seeing these huge paradigm shifts happening all at once. On the micro level, deep inside the atom, and on the macro level, global politics, military readiness, even how we talk to each other.
So our mission today for you is to cut through all that noise. We want to give you the sharpest insights and, maybe most importantly, show you the narrative that actually ties a lot of these seemingly random events together.
And a big part of that narrative today revolves around the themes of sovereignty and control.
Absolutely. So think of this as your personalized tour through the biggest stories that matter right now. We've set it up to start at the farthest reaches of reality before we bring it all back down to Earth.
We're going to begin way out there in Section 1. Cosmic anomalies and scientific breakthroughs. We're talking new physics, unexpected things happening in space, a mysterious dead star, and something they're calling a perfect conductor right here on Earth.
And then we plunge right into Section 2, the technology tipping point. This is where the sheer speed of tech is just slamming into the slow pace of regulation. We're tracking a massive global crackdown on artificial intelligence, specifically around Elon Musk's Grok.
And that's happening at the same time as these huge big tech alliances are forming, completely reshaping the digital world as we know it.
And from there, we'll get into the struggle for control in Section 3, geopolitical flashpoints in Section 4, economic currents.
That includes the renewed and very controversial push by the U.S. to acquire Greenland, the incredibly dangerous standoff with Iran, and something truly unprecedented, a criminal investigation that is shaking the very foundations of the Federal Reserve's independence.
It is a lot, but that's why you're here with us. Let's start by stretching our minds a bit. Let's head out to the cosmos. Okay, let's start with something genuinely mind-bending. A discovery that apparently left astronomers, and this is a quote, stunned.
Right.
It has to do with a dead star, an unexpected shockwave that seems to just defy what we thought we knew.
This is a perfect example of how science actually works, You find an anomaly, something that doesn't fit the model, and suddenly an entire field has to reevaluate.
And for decades, we thought we had a pretty good handle on what happens when a star dies, right?
A very good handle. Especially for low to medium mass stars, they run out of fuel, they become white dwarfs, and that's sort of the end of the story.
The expectation is a pretty quiet end. They just cool off over billions of years, maybe some gentle ejections, but nothing dramatic.
Exactly. Nothing that would upset the cosmic neighborhood. But this particular mystery shockwave, it's completely unprecedented. The energy, the scale of it. The first reports were basically astronomers saying, we have never seen anything like this. It's not just a little puff, it's a massive kinetic event.
So what does that change, for our actual understanding of the universe?
Well, it forces a complete reevaluation of our theoretical models. The post-mortem behavior of spares is suddenly a lot more complicated.
So after the collapse, after the planetary nebula phase, something else can happen.
Something powerful can happen. Finding a huge shock wave after all that means the physics of the stellar afterlife are, well, potentially more violent than we assumed. We might be missing a whole energy release mechanism. It really could reshape foundational astrophysics.
The community will be crunching that data for years.
Decades, probably.
And speaking of looking at dead stars, NASA, that's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, their Imaging X-ray Polarization Explorer, or IXPE, has given us some incredible new data on another system, EX Hydrae.
Right, the EX Hydrae system. It's about 200 light years away in the Hydra constellation. It's a binary system, so two stars orbiting each other.
And what makes this so important is the how. This is the first time we've used X-ray polarization to study a white dwarf in this kind of detail.
It is, and maybe we should unpack what that means.
Yeah, please do. What is X-ray polarization? Why is it such a big deal to measure it?
So think of light as a wave. It vibrates in a lot of different directions. Polarization is basically a measurement of the main direction of that vibration. And when you have X-rays coming out of these really energetic environments, like around a white dwarf's magnetic field, that directionality, the polarization, it tells you about the geometry of whatever is creating the X-rays. It's like a fingerprint of the magnetic field. IXPE stared at the system for almost a week, and the results were just, well, amazing.
And it helps us actually visualize what's happening.
Mm.
The report said you can see the smaller white dwarf literally pulling material gas and dust from its bigger companion star.
Yes, and that material forms what's called an accretion disk. It's this swirling disk of matter spiraling into the white dwarf, and that's what fuels the intense X-rays we see. The polarization data let the scientists map out the exact geometry of that whole environment. It confirmed the models.
So we're seeing cosmic theft in action, basically.
Slight chuckle. A very energetic cosmic theft, yes. It's a huge step forward in understanding the dynamics of these binary systems.
Okay, so that's the end of a star's life.
Yeah.
But if you want to see the beginning, the birth, the Hubble Space Telescope just delivered. It sent back these stunning images from a region called NGC 1333.
It's a spectacular stellar nursery, about 950 light years away. The images show these young stellar objects, protostars, just in the process of forming. They're wrapped in this cloud of gas and dust.
But the really exciting part for planetary scientists is that you can see a protoplanetary disk.
And that's the ballgame. That disk is a future solar system. It's this flat, rotating cloud of material around that young star, and that's where planets are going to form. We're looking at a snapshot of creation.
It's like getting a baby picture of a solar system.
That's a perfect way to put it. Hubble just keeps giving us these views that let us test our theories about how our own solar system even got here.
Okay, let's take that vast cosmic scale and shrink it all the way down to the quantum level, right here on Earth. Because there's a breakthrough in condensed matter physics that is just as wild. The creation of a perfect conductor.
This comes out of research at TU Wien, the Vienna University of Technology in Austria, and it is a groundbreaking form of matter they've engineered, an ultracold gas of atoms that acts as a perfect conductor.
Okay, we need to slow down here because this challenges basic physics, right? The stuff you learn in high school. Why is perfect conduction so radical?
Because in the classical world, it's impossible. Think about electricity in a copper wire. As the current flows, it always loses energy. It creates heat.
Right, resistance.
Resistance. The electrons are bumping into the atomic structure of the wire. It's an unavoidable energy loss. It's why your computer gets hot, why we lose power in the grid. It's a fundamental limit.
And what they've created has zero resistance. It's the complete opposite.
Precisely. The key is that they're operating in the quantum mechanical world. They take this gas, they cool it to almost absolute zero, and this is crucial. They confine it to a single one-dimensional line, like a perfect single-file lane for atoms.
And when they do that, the rules just change.
The rules change. Mass and energy can flow completely freely. No resistance, no energy loss.
But wait, are the atoms not colliding? Or are the collisions just not slowing things down?
That's the mind-bending part. They are colliding constantly. But because of the quantum properties in this specific setup, one-dimensional, ultra-cold, the collisions don't slow down the overall flow of momentum.
How is that possible?
The physicists use a specific analogy, which I think is perfect. They compared it to Newton's cradle.
Ah, the desk toy.
Yeah.
With the metal balls in a line, you lift one, it hits, and the one on the far end pops out.
Exactly. The momentum travels perfectly through the metal balls without them really moving. The atoms in this gas are doing the same thing. They collide, but they just exchange properties instantaneously. No kinetic energy is lost to the environment. That's the quantum leap.
If we could actually harness that, I mean, the implications are just staggering.
Oh, absolutely. This is the dream. Next generation quantum computers, power grids that are almost perfectly efficient, a total revolution in superconductivity.
But the massive challenge is the conditions, right? This is happening near absolute zero in a one-dimensional line.
That's the hurdle. It's a huge engineering problem. Getting this to work at room temperature is still a very long way off. But this discovery proves the fundamental physics. It shows perfect transport is possible. It gives researchers a roadmap.
From a perfect conductor to strange water. We also have new findings on something called superionic water. It sounds like science fiction, but it might explain the weird magnetic fields of Neptune and Uranus.
It is fantastical, but it's real. Superionic water is a state of matter that can only exist under the insane pressure and temperature deep inside those ice giants.
So describe this state. What does superionic even mean?
Okay, so imagine you have a rigid crystal lattice made of oxygen atoms. That's the solid part. But the hydrogen ions, instead of being locked in place, are flowing freely through that oxygen lattice, almost like a liquid or an electric current.
Whoa, so it's a solid and a conductor at the same time, a hybrid state.
Exactly. And that conducting layer is what scientists think allows for the dynamo action that generates a magnetic field. Earth's field is pretty simple, like a bar magnet, a dipole. But Neptune and Uranus have these bizarre, complex off-center magnetic fields.
And superionic water could be the reason why. It's the missing piece of the puzzle for understanding how those planets work.
Right. And while we're talking about fundamental physics, we should also touch on the discovery of new islands of inversion in nuclear physics.
Okay, this is another one that needs some unpacking. What are these islands?
This gets to the very stability of matter itself. In nuclear physics, we have what are called magic numbers.
Right, specific numbers of protons or neutrons 2, 8, 20, and so on that make an atomic nucleus incredibly stable.
Precisely. They're the foundation of the standard nuclear shell model. It's like the noble gases in chemistry. They're perfectly happy and stable. But these islands of inversion are places on the nuclear map where you find stable nuclei that defy those magic numbers.
So the rules we thought were universal aren't.
In certain extreme neutron-rich environments, they break down. Isotopes like beryllium-12, for example. The discovery of these new islands helps us understand how elements are even created in stars, a process called nucleosynthesis, and it fundamentally challenges how we map out the periodic table in the extreme.
Okay, from the deep atom all the way back up to space. We're tracking an unprecedented situation on the International Space Station, the ISS.
A very serious one. The Crew 11 mission is getting ready for an early departure because of a medical evacuation.
This is a first, right?
The first time in the history of the station that a crew member has had to leave early because of a medical issue. The problem, which hasn't been disclosed, can't be treated in orbit. They were supposed to come back in May.
It just highlights how critical the medical planning has to be for these long missions. You can't just call 911.
The logistics are mind-boggling. You have to get the astronaut down safely, but you also have to manage the station. U.S. astronaut Mike Fink had to hand over command to Russian cosmonaut Sergei Kudzverchkov. It's a stark reminder of the risks of human spaceflight and how crucial that international cooperation is.
And speaking of space operations and budgets back on Earth, there's a big fight brewing over NASA's funding.
A huge fight. Experts are pushing back and pushing back hard against the proposed cancellation of the Mars Sample Return Project.
This is the mission to bring bits of Mars back to Earth, right?
Yes, and it's not just another mission. It's considered the cornerstone of the search for past life on Mars. If we don't get those samples back here to our most sophisticated labs on Earth, our ability to look for biosignatures is severely crippled.
So scientists are saying that cutting this would waste decades of investment and progress.
And that budget uncertainty is having international ripple effects. It's threatening NASA's participation in the next big Venus mission with the European Space Agency, or ESA. That kind of collaboration is critical.
But there is some good news on the international front. The Artemis Accords.
Yes, Portugal just became the 60th country to sign on. That's the NASA-led agreement for responsible space exploration for missions to the Moon and Mars. It's really becoming the global standard for how we operate out there.
Meanwhile, the commercial side just keeps launching. SpaceX sent up another 29 Starlink satellites from Cape Canaveral in Florida.
Continuing that push for global internet coverage, it's often that commercial drive that pushes the technology forward, sometimes even faster than governments can.
And that rapid deployment of technology brings us perfectly to our next section, the technology tipping point, where innovation is just running circles around regulation. That theme of sovereignty, of who's in control, is definitely not limited to governments or space. Right here on Earth, the regulatory world is scrambling to keep up with generative AI. And nowhere is that clearer than with the crisis around Elon Musk's Grok AI.
This has blown up into a major international flashpoint. The UK's media regulator, Ofcom, has launched a formal investigation into Musk's platform, specifically about Grok generating what they call deeply concerning deepfake images.
And the concerns are incredibly serious. We're talking about allegations of intimate image abuse, non-consensual removal of clothing from photos of women, and even more disturbing, potential child sexual abuse material.
The UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, called the images disgusting. So the political pressure on X is immense right now.
And the UK is moving fast. They're bringing in new laws this week to close legal loopholes. The new rules won't just target sharing this stuff, which was already illegal, but the actual creation of the deepfakes.
Right, it goes after the source. And this all falls under the UK's bigger Online Safety Act.
That act is the legal hammer here. It forces platforms to use strict age verification, and if they don't comply, the fines could be crippling. We're talking billions.
The UK government has even floated the idea that if X doesn't comply, they could be, well, kicked out of the UK market entirely.
And this isn't just a UK thing. The global backlash is already starting. Malaysia and Indonesia have become the first countries to just outright block Grok over these images.
It's a clear signal. Nations are starting to draw a line, prioritizing what they see as societal values over just letting any technology run free.
This has just ignited a huge political fight over digital free speech. Grok's response was to limit the tool to paying subscribers.
Which regulators immediately called a deflection tactic, not a real solution.
And Musk himself has amped up the rhetoric, calling the UK government's actions fascism.
And then the US government got involved. The State Department reportedly warned the UK that this investigation could end up harming digital free speech, which is, a core American value.
So you have this massive clash. On one side, you have national security, child protection, privacy rights, all paramount in places like the UK. On the other, you have the American ideal of free expression and minimal regulation.
The outcome here could set a huge precedent for how AI is governed everywhere. It's really a battle over informational sovereignty. Who gets to control the digital world? That's the question being answered right now.
And while that regulatory war is being fought in public, there's this quiet consolidation happening in the background. The great AI consolidation.
The tech giants are realizing they can't fall behind. They're teaming up.
And the biggest example of that has to be Apple and Google.
It's a huge deal. Google's Gemini AI is going to start powering Apple's Siri. This instantly makes Siri way more powerful. It'll give you more sophisticated answers, let it work across different apps. It puts Apple right back in the generative AI race.
It's a sign that even the biggest companies can't do it all themselves. At the same time, Amazon is making a big move to protect its dominance with Alexa.
Alexa plus Seft, they announced that 97% of their devices are compatible with this new, smarter version. And you have to remember, they've sold over 100 million Alexa devices. That's a massive customer base they're leveraging.
And their strategy is a mix, right? They're using their own in-house model, Nova, but they're also partnering with others, including Anthropic's Claude AI.
It's a smart multi-model approach.
Yeah.
And they also just bought a startup called Bee, which makes an AI wristband that records and transcribes your conversation. So they're pushing AI deeper and deeper into our lives.
Let's talk about Anthropic for a second. They're really trying to carve out a niche for themselves as the ethical AI company.
They are, mainly through this concept they call constitutional AI.
Right, that's their unique training method. Instead of just learning from human feedback, which can be biased, the AI critiques itself based on a set of ethical rules.
Exactly. The AI has a constitution, a set of principles based on things like the UN's Declaration of Human Rights. So after it generates a response, it basically asks itself, did that follow my rules? It's an attempt to build in safety from the ground up.
It's a fascinating philosophical difference.
Yeah.
And they're also making practical tools, like their new co-work tool for the Claude desktop app.
That tool is a great example of making AI more accessible. It lets people who don't know how to code manage coding tasks. You can just tell Claude, hey, look at the files in this folder and make these changes. It's bridging that gap between what the AI can do and what normal people can get it to do.
And this push for efficiency is completely transforming other fields, especially healthcare.
The money flowing in is just incredible. NVIDIA and the drug company Eli Lilly are co-investing $1 billion to build an AI drug discovery lab in San Francisco.
$1 billion.
Their goal is to speed up drug development. An AI can analyze massive data sets, genetic information, chemical structures, and predict which compounds might work, way faster than a human ever could. It could take drug development from a decade down to maybe a year or two.
And the competition in that space is fierce. Anthropic just launched Claude for Healthcare right after OpenAI announced ChatGPT Health.
And OpenAI is all in. They just bought a health record startup called Torch for $100 million. They want to integrate ChatGPT Health directly with electronic health records or EHRs.
The potential for innovation is obvious, but this immediately brings up huge questions about data privacy and security.
Massive questions. You're dealing with the most sensitive information imaginable. These companies have to navigate incredibly strict regulations like IPA in the US to make sure that patient data is protected.
Okay, moving from AI to the next frontier, quantum computing. Investor interest is spiking here.
It is. People are starting to see it as less theoretical and more of a real investable technology. Two companies are getting a lot of attention.
IonQ is one. They use a technique called trapped ion quantum computing. And the other is D-wave quantum.
Right. D-Wave focuses on something called quantum annealing, which is really good for solving complex optimization problems, things like logistics, financial modeling, problems that would choke a classical computer. The commercial race is definitely on.
Now, for a quick look at the wider tech economy, Apple hit a pretty massive milestone.
A huge one. Developers have now earned over $550 billion from the App Store since it launched in 2008. There are almost 2 million apps on there now.
It's an incredible success story, but it's also a story that comes with a lot of criticism.
Constant criticism. Regulators all over the world are still scrutinizing Apple for its alleged monopolistic practices, especially that 30% commission they take on sales.
We also saw an interesting move from Eric Majakowski. He's the guy who founded Pebble, the original smartwatch company.
Right, he just unveiled his new company, Core Devices, and he's taking a very different approach. He's rejecting that grow-at-all-costs startup culture.
He wants to focus on sustainable growth, on making good products that last, rather than just chasing venture capital and a quick exit. It's a reaction to all the burnout you see in the tech world.
And just to round out the AI updates, Google has updated its Video AI VO 3.1.
This is their competitor to OpenAI, Sora, right?
It is, and the new feature is that you can now give it a reference image. So you can show it a picture of a specific character or a specific style of landscape, and it will incorporate that into the video it generates. It gives creators a lot more artistic control.
And a final quick reminder about cybersecurity. The fintech firm Betterment just confirmed they had a data breach.
It was a sophisticated social engineering attack. Hackers got some personal info and then immediately used it to send phishing emails to customers about crypto scams. It's a reminder that as our tech gets smarter, so do the people trying to exploit it.
Okay, let's pull the lens way back now. We started in space, we dove into the quantum realm, and now we're landing squarely on Earth's most contested political stages, where the battle for sovereignty is very, very real. We have to start with this absolutely extraordinary story. The annexation saga involving the United States, Denmark, and Greenland.
It's back. President Trump has renewed his push to acquire Greenland, and he's framing it as a matter of urgent national security.
The argument being to prevent Russia and China from gaining control in the Arctic.
Exactly. And this isn't just talk anymore. U.S. Representative Randy Fine has actually introduced the Greenland Annexation and Statehood Act. It would authorize the president to take the steps needed to acquire the territory and make it the 51st state.
This whole move, though, it seems to be ignoring one pretty critical factor.
The people who actually live there.
The people who live there. And their reaction was not subtle.
It was an unequivocal rejection. The Greenland government put out a statement saying they reject the proposal under any circumstance. They asserted their autonomy, their right to self-determination, and their loyalty to Denmark. For them, this is a direct assault on their identity.
And Denmark is backing them up. The Danish ambassador met with Representative Fine to make it clear that Greenland is not for sale. It's non-negotiable territory.
Which puts Denmark in a very tricky position. They have to maintain their security cooperation with the U.S. through NATO, while at the same time defending their own national integrity against, well, a NATO partner. It's a very delicate balancing act.
And of course, Russia saw an opportunity to stir the pot.
Of course. Dmitry Medvedev, who's the deputy chairman of their Security Council, basically suggested that Greenland might hold a referendum to join Russia if the U.S. isn't careful.
Which is just a pure provocation.
A total provocation. It's designed to create chaos. But analysts see Trump's move as part of a bigger strategy. This new globalism focused on energy dominance, on becoming the undisputed Arctic superpower, and on using perceived military weakness in Europe to force their hand.
It's a fascinating and, frankly, a scary example of 21st century power politics. Okay, let's move to another major flashpoint. Iran. We're seeing a crisis both inside the country and on its borders.
The internal situation is still incredibly tense. There are ongoing widespread protests fueled by these deep socio-political grievances. It's probably the most significant challenge to the regime since the 1979 revolution.
And the government's response has been what you'd expect, a brutal security crackdown.
A brutal crackdown and, crucially, a near-total internet shutdown. They're trying to stop protesters from communicating and organizing. It's a key part of their playbook for survival.
Eyewitness accounts that have managed to get out describe horrific scenes. One quote that stuck with me was a witness saying security forces just kept killing unarmed demonstrators.
And at the same time, the state-controlled media is completely obscuring the reality of the situation. It creates this atmosphere of fear and confusion. Analysts point out that the regime survives, in part because there's an Absence of credible alternatives.
There's no unified political opposition for people to rally around.
Exactly, which leaves the regime in power despite all the dissatisfaction.
Meanwhile, the U.S. position on Iran is volatile and conflicted. President Trump is pushing for military strikes and threatening a huge 25% tariff on any country that trades with Iran.
And he's also trying to position himself as a champion of the protesters, someone who will rescue them. It's a very complicated message.
But there seems to be pushback against that hardline military stance from within his own administration.
There is. Figures like Senator Vance and other advisors are reportedly urging diplomacy, pointing out the immense risks of a military intervention, especially as the president is weighing potential airstrikes.
And what's Iran's response to all this?
It's a mix of defiance and an open door. The Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araqi, said that the country is prepared for war, maybe even more so than during the recent conflict with Israel. But he also said they don't want a war and are open to negotiations.
On their own terms.
On their own terms, respect and equality. He also accused the U.S. and Israel of fomenting the unrest, calling it ISIS-like violence to try and delegitimize the protesters.
It's just a pressure cooker. Internal dissent, external threats, conflicting U.S. policies. It's one of the most dangerous spots on the planet right now.
Let's pivot to another complex situation. The Venezuela geopolitical puzzle. Here, it's all about sovereignty and oil.
Venezuelan officials like Vice President Delcy Rodriguez are constantly talking about national unity against imperialist aggressions from the U.S.
And Rodriguez was very specific. She said, any oil negotiations will happen on Venezuela's terms, not under exploitative conditions dictated by foreign powers. They're trying to project strength and control over their resources.
But the internal reality seems to be a lot messier than that national rhetoric.
A lot messier. There were these intercepted wiretap recordings that exposed a Colombian cocaine trafficking ring, talking about its connections to the Venezuelan military's notorious Cartel of the Suns. It shows just how deeply narco-trafficking is entangled with the state itself.
And then you have the international pressure, the U.S. sanctions.
Which are clearly having an effect. 2 supertankers flagged to China, the Xinji and the Thousand Sunny, were on their way to pick up Venezuelan crude oil. They had to turn around and go home empty.
Because of the U.S. blockade?
Because of the blockade, and China is or was Venezuela's main customer. They take the oil as repayment for massive debts. So cutting off that flow is a huge blow to both Caracas and Beijing. It shows how effective economic power can be.
In the middle of all this, President Trump held a surprise meeting at the White House with Maria Machado,
the Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner. It was a very high-profile move. She even offered to share her Nobel Prize with him.
Which is clearly a gesture to try and lock in U.S. support for a political transition in Venezuela. They give the opposition a huge boost of legitimacy on the world stage.
Shifting to another conflict zone, Russia has renewed its deadly strikes on Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine. 2 people were killed, several others wounded.
The U.S. condemned it immediately at the UN Security Council. They called it a dangerous and inexplicable escalation.
And they were particularly critical of Russia's use of nuclear-capable Oreshnik missiles. Now, they're carrying conventional warheads, but just the fact that they can carry nuclear ones is a massive escalation in rhetoric.
And Russia is leaning into that military modernization hard.
Very hard. They're set to unveil a whole suite of advanced weapons this year. The new Su-75 Checkmate stealth fighter, a new nuclear submarine called the Khabarovsk, which is designed to carry those huge Poseidon nuclear torpedoes.
They're also rolling out the Sarmat Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, or ICBM, and the S-500 air defense system. It's a huge strategic shift.
And Europe is reacting. France just launched a recruitment campaign for a new voluntary military service for 18 to 25-year-olds, specifically to counter the perceived threat from Russia.
That military buildup is even having an impact in Asia. China is worried about North Korea's deepening defense ties with Russia.
Right. It's destabilizing the Korean peninsula, which Beijing doesn't want. So analysts think China might actually see this as an opportunity to pressure Kim Jong-un on denuclearization, hoping it will reduce the U.S. military presence in the region.
Elsewhere, a landmark case has started at the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, in The Hague.
This is the Rohingya genocide case. The Gambia is accusing Myanmar's leadership of horrific crimes against the Rohingya Muslim minority. Mass killings, sexual violence, it's what led to that exodus of over 700,000 refugees.
And the ICJ has confirmed it has jurisdiction, which is a massive step.
It's a crucial phase in the fight for accountability. Myanmar denies everything, but this case could set a huge precedent for holding state leaders accountable under international law.
And a quick diplomatic update from the Horn of Africa. Somalia just canceled all of its agreements with the United Arab Emirates.
They're accusing the UAE of undermining their national unity by supporting breakaway regions like Somaliland. It's another example of a nation struggling to assert its own sovereignty against interference from more powerful regional players.
And finally, a quick look at UK politics. Former Conservative MP Nadim Zahawi has defected to Nigel Farage's Reform UK party.
A pretty dramatic move. It reportedly happened after he was denied a peerage, a seat in the House of Lords. It just highlights the deep fractures in the Conservative Party and the continuing rise of the far right in bearish politics.
This theme of sovereignty is just everywhere. But you can't talk about control without looking at the institutions that are supposed to control the global economy itself. And one of them is under fire like never before. Okay, the biggest story shaking the financial world right now, and one that could affect global economic stability, is this criminal investigation.
An almost unbelievable one.
U.S. federal prosecutors have opened an investigation into the congressional testimony of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell.
This is just extraordinary. The independence of the Federal Reserve is seen as a sacred principle for global finance. And Powell himself released a video statement basically suggesting this is a politically motivated attack by the Trump administration.
The goal being to jeopardize the Fed's independence, to influence decisions on things like interest rates and inflation.
Exactly. The fear is that if the executive branch can just harass the head of the central bank, it completely compromises the Fed's ability to make decisions based on economics, not politics. Critics are calling it a dangerous politicization of the Justice Department.
And the global reaction shows just how serious this is.
Oh, yeah. 11 other central banks from around the world issued a public statement supporting Powell. They stood in solidarity and emphasized how critical an independent Fed is for the entire global financial system.
It shows how much the world relies on the stability and predictability of the U.S. central bank. But the wild part is the market's reaction. You had this huge political bombshell, a sell-off in banking stocks, but then the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones just climbed to record highs.
It's bizarre. It suggests that traders, while they see the political risk, are looking past it. Maybe they're focused on strong earnings from tech stocks like Nvidia, or maybe they just don't believe this political maneuver will ultimately succeed.
But some forecasters are saying that resilience is just a facade.
Right. Gerald Celente, who publishes the Trends Journal, he put out this really stark forecast for 2026. He's predicting a possible greatest depression driven by economic fragmentation and geopolitical hostility.
His argument is based on historical patterns, right? Failing empires, high inflation, massive national debt.
All of it. He thinks the U.S. dollar's dominance is fragile. He's specifically forecasting that gold prices could soar to as high as $5,000 an ounce as people lose faith in currencies. He sees the current market highs as a bubble.
That's a grim forecast. And it contrasts sharply with another controversial move from the administration.
The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, plans to stop assigning a monetary value to human lives when they're assessing pollution regulations.
Can you explain what that means?
So in the past, when the EPA considered a new rule, they would do a cost-benefit analysis. They'd weigh the cost to industry against the benefits to public health, which included an estimated value for each life saved from, say, air pollution.
And now they're taking that lives saved value out of the equation.
They're taking it out. The focus will now be primarily on the cost of the pollution controls. Critics argue this move is basically prioritizing corporate profits over human lives, especially in vulnerable communities.
And that ties right into another public health fight happening in Congress, a proposed $125 million cut to funding for replacing lead pipes.
This would be a devastating cut. This funding is from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Lead is a potent neurotoxin. It causes severe developmental problems in children.
So this money is critical for ensuring clean water.
Absolutely. And advocates are pointing out that the research shows that for every dollar you spend replacing lead pipes, you get a $14 return on investment in terms of reduced healthcare costs and increased productivity. It's a cut that makes no economic sense.
On a different health note, the new U.S. food guidelines are causing a stir.
They are. They're putting a new focus on animal protein and full-fat dairy, which goes against a lot of advice from environmental groups and some health advocates. It highlights that growing divide in nutrition policy.
And shifting gears, we saw a huge labor action in New York City.
A massive one. Nearly 15,000 nurses went on strike across 3 of the city's biggest hospital systems, Mount Sinai, Montefiore, and New York Presbyterian.
And their demands were focused on safety, safe staffing ratios, better benefits, and more protection against workplace violence. It reflects this growing discontent among healthcare workers nationwide.
And in another part of the world, a tragic healthcare story is demanding accountability. The acclaimed Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie has accused a hospital in Lagos of negligence after the death of her infant son.
It sparked a public outcry in Nigeria over the standards in their healthcare system. It's one of those painful reminders of the global inequalities in medical care.
But on a slightly lighter and much weirder medical note, we have a fascinating story about a cure. The poop pill cure.
Slight chuckle. Okay, let's unpack this one carefully. It sounds bizarre, but this is real, cutting-edge science.
It is. Scientists successfully treated a very rare and debilitating gut disorder called autobrewery syndrome.
Also known as gut drunk.
Right. It's a condition where a person's own gut microbiome produces so much alcohol from carbohydrates that they're essentially drunk all the time without ever having a drink.
And the treatment was a fecal microbiota transplantation, or FMT.
Essentially, yes, a poop pill. You introduce a healthy microbiome from a donor to completely reset the patient's gut flora. And it worked. It just underscores the incredible potential of gut science.
Okay, let's travel back in time for our final section. From the microbiome to ancient empires. A groundbreaking discovery in modern-day Turkey.
At the ruins of Bozcaada Hattusha, which was the capital of the ancient Hittite Empire, archaeologists found cuneiform tablets with evidence of a completely new Indo-European language.
A new language.
New language. They're provisionally calling it Kalashima. The Hittite Empire, which was around from 1650 to 1200 BCE, was incredibly diverse. It was a polyethnic society.
So finding a new language must be a huge deal for linguists.
It's immense. It gives us this incredible insight into how the Hittites managed such a diverse empire. It rewrites a piece of our understanding of the Bronze Age.
And one last discovery, this one from Germany. A 700-year-old underground chamber. A medieval mystery vault.
Historians are still speculating on its purpose. Maybe it was a safe haven during local conflicts, or maybe for food storage during a long siege. But either way, it offers this tangible look into the survival strategies of people in 14th century Germany.
Incredible. So we've gone from protostars to a perfect quantum conductor. We've navigated AI deepfake regulation, a crisis over Greenland, and a direct challenge to the global economy.
It's clear the world is just struggling to adapt on so many fronts at once. The boundaries we thought were solid, political, economic, physical, even ethical, they're all shifting.
So after this whole deep dive, what's the big takeaway?
Well, the stories we covered today. The U.S. government warning the U.K. about its investigation into Grok AI, the push to annex Greenland against the will of its people, and this criminal probe targeting the independence of the Fed.
They all seem to be about the same thing.
They all point back to this one core tension, the shifting definition of sovereignty in the 21st century.
Whether it's territorial sovereignty, like with Greenland and Denmark, or institutional sovereignty, like the Fed trying to resist political pressure.
Or informational sovereignty, which is the fight over who gets to regulate dangerous AI content from a private company. The world is struggling to agree on who holds the ultimate control in this new digital and politically polarized environment.
Which leaves us with a final provocative question for you to think about.
What happens when established national boundaries and government institutions clash directly with the
enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.